Well, hello to everyone that's joining and the ones that have been waiting here. All right, I really want to appreciate you all for joining. It's very exciting for me to be able to teach you this course on scientific illustration. It's really a subject that I love and I'm very passionate about. Um, this is a long course, and I hope you get to join me in this process. It's going to be a 3 month course, and we're going to be able to go deep into different media. We're going to start with pencil and sketching, then we're going to jump to ink, and finally, we're going to do some watercolor. So, yes, this is our first class. We're going to start with a little bit of the introduction of scientific illustration. I have some examples for you today. And yeah, beside these examples, we're also going to do some activities with our pencils and start getting used to this, start getting used to the gradients, to the technique that we're going to use to be able to represent what we're seeing in the paper. All right. So, okay, I just want to check that everyone is able to see that. I'm just checking on the messages on the app. Yeah, sorry, we were having some technical issues and we're just working through there. Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So we're gonna start a little bit with introduction of scientific illustration, and I want to show you some examples. But I'm gonna be doing this every class, and I'm gonna be showing you some examples because the amount of people that have worked in scientific illustration is um, almost impossible to mention. So when I talk about scientific illustration history, it's not always easy to mention them all. I am gonna mention some of them, and maybe I'm gonna start by the one that is well very famous. Mm, okay, but first I just want to talk a little bit about scientific illustration. I want to talk about it, how this tool help us communicate and transmit knowledge. I believe that this tool help us representate different forms of knowledge and help us communicate it in a way that is accessible for all. Sometimes the language of science does not allow us to communicate it in such a simple way, and that's where art and science meet and create this wonderful and yeah, incredible tool that help us simplify a complex concept in something that is going to be easier to read. Mm, right. So I'm going to start a little bit with Leonardo da Vinci. And why is it important to talk about him? Okay, is very important to talk about Leonardo da Vinci because he was very good in observing. So observation is one of the skills that we need the most when we're doing scientific illustration. Sometimes when we're doing art, we're doing a representation of something that we like, that we see, that we're drawn to. Is not always about making it accurate. Maybe that's one of the things that makes scientific illustration different than art. So Leonardo started um, working on. He was a very curious person. He liked to do his own dissection. So then in here we can see a page of his diary, and he would take the corpse, the dead bodies, and do his own dissections to be able to understand. It was a guy that was very passionate about understanding how things work. So you can see in these examples that he is very detailed in seeing how, in this moment, the example is the joint of his shoulder, how everything connects, how everything is placed, and he's doing something that I believe is beautiful, that is all the notation on the side of the page that tell us that he had a huge understanding about the subject. It was not only about observing, but really understanding. And in this way, we can also see scientific illustration as a tool for learning what we have in front. So we have here another example of him. And this is an example that's more biological. It's also a very good example of observation that we're going to be working a lot in this course, how to decompose a figure to be able to represent it in an accurate way. We're going to jump to Albert Dürer. This was a German a man that lived between 1471 and 1528. This was a master of the Renaissance, and I want to tell you the story of this scientific illustration. He was an illustrator, and he was very famous for his engravings. This here is one of his engravings, and is very famous because the person who did this representation, he had never seen a rhinoceros in his life. So he did this work based on the description that he got and sketches that other people made. In particular, he received a letter by a Portuguese explorer. His name was Francisco de Almeida. And yeah, of course, with this representation, with the description that he was provided with, he was able to create this illustration. We can see that there's parts of the rhino that they're not completely accurate. It has more of an armor-like plates instead of the rhino skin, but that was the way people would describe it when they hadn't seen an animal like this before. So this is pretty impressive, and is one of the ways a scientific illustration can work with. When they give you a description of an animal that you've never seen before, and with that information you create this representation for other people to understand and for other people to have an idea of what this is. Okay, and then we're gonna continue with a scientific illustrator. She was a Belgium. Her name is Maria Sibylla Merian. She lived between 1647 and 1717. She's very important in scientific illustration because she not only illustrated the organism, but she also started illustrating interactions between insects and plants. So what's interesting about the illustrations that she made is that she was able to have one biological organism, and then she would illustrate different parts of the cycle. In this illustration we can see an open flower, we have a closed flower, we have a fruit, we have different leaves, and all these structures are not always visible in one specimen. So in examples like this is where we can also see some benefits that scientific illustration has over things like photography. Because if you're a nature photograph, you're never going to be able to have a photography of all the structures of the plant at the same time, like she would do on these illustrations. And then she would do the same with the butterfly, with the insect, right? Because she has the caterpillar, and then she has an open butterfly, and then the other side of the butterfly, the inner side of the wing, which is also very hard to capture when you're doing photography. So yeah, with these examples, I just want you to see and to appreciate all the benefits, and to understand that scientific illustration is still something that is very relevant nowadays. I think a lot of people think that it's gonna be replaced with AI, with photography, with all those things, but we still see a lot of benefit from scientific illustration, like the one I just mentioned here of the different structures, but also we can think about sometimes you can just not take a photo, or sometimes the structures that you want to show, they're not as visible as you would want them to be, so you really have to represent them. Or when you want to make a dissection, like in this case that she's opening up the fruit so you can see it on the inside, then all those things are things that she's thinking in advance, and she's planning, like, okay, what is it that I want to show? And she's showing such a huge amount of information in one image. That's one of the things that make her so important and so relevant. She wrote a book about the insects in Suriname. It's called Metamorphosis Insectorium in Suriname. And yeah, she documented a lot of flora and fauna of this country. In this in this image we can see a lot of what I was telling you before. We can identify again the different structures of the plant and the different stages of the animal. So we have the caterpillar and we have the butterfly. And the way she would do this, the way she would also put that they're not placed separately. It's not like one organism is alone and the other one is also alone, but they are together and they are living together in the ecosystem. Sometimes scientific illustration is also made in a way that's very straightforward. Like they show you the illustration, they show you the structure, maybe the size. But I also want to show you that scientific illustration can be creative. It can allow you a lot of liberties. You can come up with a lot of ideas for you to show what you're interested in showing. And yes, well, talking about creativity and showing things in beautiful ways, we're gonna jump to Ernest Haeckel. This is also a German man. He lived between 1834 and 1919, and he was known by these amazing, complex illustrations of marine organisms. He was a fan of symmetry, and you could see that in his illustrations. So the way he would work, he would grab a microscope and start drawing all the marine organisms that he would find. And you can see here how he plays with the layout, how he plays with the placement of the organism. So it's giving you a lot of scientific information, a lot of information about anatomy, about the colors, about textures, but also it's giving you such a pleasing image that maybe is not the first thing that you think of when you think of scientific illustration, because he's also a good reference in not only contemporary biology but also in art. So he would create these amazing illustrations. And yes, we can see another example here where he would place all these organisms in a place that is very pleasant for the viewer to appreciate it. And of course, these illustrations would come with an explanation, a description of the organism, and all the anatomy that he was also researching. And lastly, I want to jump to an illustrator from Latin America. He's a Mexican illustrator. His name is Jose Maria Velasco. He lived between 1840 and 1912. He was more known for his landscapes, but he also did a lot of work in scientific illustration. We can see here an example of hummingbirds of Mexico, and he was really good in capturing all this natural Mexican beauty and understanding the ecological environment of this country. He documented it in illustrations like this, where he's showing different species of hummingbirds. And I want to show you also this one, where things that I was telling you before, you can see them here. That when you're doing scientific illustration, then you see the animal on the outside, and maybe you're interested in something. There's a structure that you wanna explain a little bit further. That just the outside image is not gonna be able to explain it, then you can do that, and then you can do like he's doing on the bottom of that illustration to make the cut and show how it was relevant for him and all the information that he was researching on this. All right. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about scientific illustration because it has evolved a lot since Da Vinci. I'm gonna, as I was mentioning, I'm gonna show you more examples. Every class we're gonna see examples, and I'm gonna be showing you also things that are happening nowadays with scientific illustration and how this is such an important tool, how it can be integrated in different approaches, and how it's so broad. The course that we're seeing is a course on animal illustration. We're gonna do our activities and our homeworks and all that with animal illustration. But if you think about it, you can do scientific illustration about any science. It doesn't have to be only about biological. It doesn't have to be only about things that we can perceive. But maybe if you want to explain something about physics or something about chemics, things that you would not necessarily think that you need an illustration for, but that has super complex concepts that you cannot understand, you can find a way to illustrate that and to facilitate it to understand furthermore what's happening with this scientific concept. Okay. I'm gonna check on the comments of the page back. I cannot really see them from here. We're gonna jump to an activity. We're gonna jump to an activity that I want you guys to do with me. So as I mentioned before, we're gonna be working with pencils on this first month. And about all these illustrations, all the examples that I showed you today, I wanna also make you realize that all these illustrations started with a sketch. So we're gonna be working on sketches, and we're gonna be working to increase and perfect our abilities to observe and the ways that we can simplify an image to be able to draw it. The materials that we need are very simple. I have 3 pencils. I have 2H, HB, and 2B, an eraser, pencil sharpener, and we're gonna jump into it. So let me show you. Alright, so yeah, everything starts with a sketch. And we have different pencils to do this. So as I was mentioning, I have a 2H. Let's see. I have a 2H. I have an HB. And I have a 2B. And the difference between these pencils is the hardness. So the H means hard. If you have if you go more to the H, it's going to be a harder pencil. So it's going to be able to provide with softer straws. And if you go to the B's, it's going to be darker. We're going to play with these three. You usually can find till 4H, 7H even, and to the others I also like 8B. And I want you to do this exercise that I'm showing on the screen, where we're gonna work with the gradients. So the gradients are the things that are gonna make us understand things like volumes, understand also things like depth, and is what's gonna make our drawings three-dimensional instead of flat. I want to tell you a little bit about how to use the pencil. And there's different ways. This is something that everyone can agree that people can have their own preferences. Always when you're drawing, I want to show you, I have here the paper on a table, and I do have to think of the texture of the table, because sometimes that texture can leave the same texture on our paper, and we not always want that. So when you're working on a surface, just make sure that the surface is also a smooth surface that is not gonna transpass to your paper. We have different ways to work with the pencils. When you're trying to do shading, you wanna grab it a little bit on an angle. When we're drawing lines, we're gonna do it in a more straight way. But if I want to do shading, I can grab it like this and start shading in this way. Because the point of the pencil is touching on the side instead of we grab the point, but it's touching on the side. That's gonna allow us to cover a bigger part. But in here you can see that I'm having already the texture of the table. So let's try. I'm gonna try to put more paper underneath so we can avoid this. This is one way. You can just grab it, and then we want to get used to this. We want to get used to the pressure. Oh, and see, now we don't see the texture of the table that much when we do it like this. When we're doing this exercise, we want to play with the pressure that we're putting on the pencil. So we can do what you can see on the side, the example that we have. And it's just basically starting the hardest that you can. Start the hardest. When you have a small part of the paper like this, and you don't want to go and do these big straws, you can just start with small circles, and that's a good exercise that help you control the pressure that you're applying on the paper, and then it can help you control the gradient that you want to have. So we want to start the hardest. And we want to finish the softest. The idea with playing with the different possibilities of using your pencil is that you also understand how it's going to help you create different textures. So before learning to create textures, the first thing we want to do is create no texture at all. And in here, the texture that we're seeing is basically just the paper itself. So then we have softest that the pencil can give us, the hardest, and let's do here and in between. And the point of the exercise is mixing these two in a smooth transition. We don't have to worry right now about not going out of the line or anything. We just have to worry about the pressure that we put in on the pencil, about how softly we're grabbing the pencil to be able to do our smooth movements. You can see here I'm going a little light instead of going a little dark, so I can put more pressure. And what's wonderful about pencil is that you can make a lot of mistakes and you can just erase it. So that's also wonderful about sketches. When you're working with ink, then maybe you're going to be more conscious about it because you think, okay, if I make a mistake, I have to start all over. Like correcting your mistakes can be harder. And that's why we're starting with pencil. Because this is going to allow us to experiment with the materials to achieve what we want to achieve, and to not be scared to ruin it, not be scared to doing things wrong, because really there's not a wrong way to doing things. So you see how I'm going to the dark side? And maybe you can see that I'm not putting enough pressure on it. So when I reach here, it's like a very strong line, so we can start to soften that transition. When I put more pressure here, so it can be darker. And I'm not pretending that this is gonna be fast. Learning to get used with your pencils is not an easy task. I like to think of drawing as a sport, and then you have to practice. Practice, you have to train it. This is very important, or else you're never gonna get it. I know a lot of people that say that they're just not good at drawing, and then they're never gonna be able to do a good illustration or a good drawing. But they don't really try. I didn't draw myself for the first couple years of my life. I think I was around maybe 20, 19, 20 when I said like, okay, I really like this. I don't know why I'm not trying to pursue it more when I like it and I think I could learn it. And it is like that. You can always learn it. Drawing is not necessarily a skill that you're born with. Of course, there's people that maybe understand it faster, and maybe they can get to an observation exercise and understand it faster. Like they see it and they can represent it in the paper faster than other people would do. But let me tell you, this is also a thing of training your brain. Because a lot of times our brain, when we're drawing, it tells us what we know instead of what we're seeing. So then we want to draw what we know instead of what's in front of us. And that's something we're gonna see in the activity of observation. Right now I just want you to focus on being able to use your pencils in a way that we can do this. Why is this important also? Because then you can understand that with the same pencil we have this value and we have this value. So then if we have these three pencils, the amount of values is going to multiply. And yeah, if you keep having more and more, then that's just going to be a lot of values that, as I was telling you, they can help us understand things like three-dimensionality. They can help us understand things like texture. Okay, they're asking it for all the classes. We're only gonna need these pencils. And yes, well, those are the ones I use. But I just want to let you know that it's also a matter of what you like. And I'm a person that don't goes too dark. Okay, I'm jumping to the 2B so you can see the softest that I have and the hardest that I have. So yeah, we're gonna be using these three because I think it allows us to have already a big range of values. If you see this dark that I have with the 2A, the 2B is already pretty dark. But yes, I was mentioning, if you want to use darker things, you can also do it. Or if you want to use softer pencils, like harder pencils, you can also do so. Just want to show you, maybe I have a HB here, and we use it here. This HB. And we compare these two shades. Okay, give me a second. Perfect. If we compare these two, of course, we can understand that this is, of course, darker than this, but the difference is not that much. Like the dark that a 2B is giving us is already pretty dark, so it can help us in all this process. Yeah, I think our issue is not really the dark values right now. Maybe what we want to think about is the light ones. We do have light ones here, but maybe we could even go softer. I have a 4H here, and maybe you can see it already when I write it on the paper. That is way softer. And if I just go and continue this one here, you can see how this can help our lightest values. So if you want to add another pencil different than 2H, HB, and 2B, could be 4H. Okay, I'm gonna finish the example that I'm doing with the 2B. If you have any question about things like holding the pencil or just putting the pressure or being able to create the gradient, you can also ask me. I know that we are also receiving people from different backgrounds, so it would be interesting for me to know if you want to put it on the chat. What's your background? Do you already draw? What's your, yeah, what kind of encounter have you had with scientific illustration? Like, are you just discovering it? Or maybe you already know something about scientific illustration, you've seen it before and you're curious. I can tell you a little bit about my background and how I got all the way to scientific illustration, and is that I study ecology. So ecology is the science of interactions. And I think it was a very interesting thing to study. I learned a lot. But I always felt that when people are trying to explain these scientific concepts, maybe they're lacking tools to explain what they really want to explain, and that's when I found scientific illustration, and when I realized that this could be a tool that it didn't have to be super different from science. Like science and art are things that can work together. So yeah, I started to do scientific illustration as a learning tool first. So I just would love to draw birds and understand their anatomy. And when you're studying ecology and maybe you go to do bird watching, if you only look at the bird from afar, it is very hard to. Oh, okay, we're having issues here. Give me a second. Yes, I'm just gonna do a quick change of cameras so we can keep seeing this. Alright, we're working on it. Thank you so much for your patience. I know that we have had a lot of technical issues today. Okay, I have a message from Norma. I love drawing. I'm a graphic designer, curious about scientific illustration. That's very interesting. That's very interesting because as a designer, you understand a lot about layouts. You understand a lot about how how all the visual factor helps, no? And that's something that you're gonna use in scientific illustration for sure. Okay, we are back on this. I hope you can see. You can see the example that we are doing. Now I'll show you. We're almost done. But yeah, so I was showing you the gradient that we were able to do with this pencil. And then all the different values that we can have. We can go darker with this. I feel that every time we're doing this exercise, we always have like two different type of people. The ones that go too dark too fast, and the ones that take a while to make it darker. So I just want to let you know, like, don't be scared of making it darker. Yeah, I have to admit that I'm the one that takes a while and makes it darker. But as you can see, when we're finishing this exercise, and we compare it with the previous one that we did, we see that the one on top is a bit lighter and the one down is a bit darker. So then we could, even if we would want to, we could do an exercise where we put these two together, like instead of doing one on top of the other, we would do one right next to the other, so we can play with this gradient from the softest. Like I use the 4H here for the lightest part here. So what we're gonna do now is that we're gonna jump to our observation exercise. We're gonna use this image as our example today. And I know that I told you that this course is all about animal illustration, but I do believe that when we're drawing something that's not a moving organism, then it helps us in a way. So we're gonna do this leaf. And what I want you guys to do when we're gonna be drawing this is to try to decompose the image. And when I say that I want you to decompose the image, what I actually mean is to try to find all the geometrical figures on this plant. I see a lot of triangles. Like if I start looking at the upper part, I see a lot of triangles. Okay, I can divide this maybe in three. So I'm just doing this line where we have the leaf start. We can have a triangle up. And then we have the other triangle up. It's just a little bigger on the base. This point is maybe higher than this other one, then it goes down as well. And then we just have another triangle down. So let's do that. It also has like a diagonal. If we look at it, it's not like a straight line down, right? But it's going to the side. So we see that almost this point and that point are at the same. So we're gonna draw this line. Okay, this is part where I tell you, like, don't be afraid of doing things wrong. Just try to draw what you see. And I think this is the simplest way I can see that leaf. I have two triangles on top, I have one triangle down. And this is where we start the whole observation activity. So I want you to think, when you are drawing and you draw a line, what does that line mean? Or why are you drawing a line? Because in reality lines don't really exist, do they? So if we look in a leaf like this, what we want to convey with a line is just a change of light. In here we have a lot of light, we have just a wide empty space, and in here we have the darkness of the leaf. So that's what we're doing with lines. When we're doing all these lines, what we really wanna show is this change of light. So then we have to understand that we're doing a change of light, then that light has to follow. If I do this line to separate the inner part of the leaf with the outer part, then the tone of this line is gonna follow into the leaf. And I will explain this further later. Right now let's focus a little bit on the shape, because we simplify it, no? But then maybe we can think like, okay, maybe this is a little bit more rounded. And we're gonna try to find all these extra shapes that we have inside. So that's what we're doing. First we're deconstructing it, and then slowly we're gonna start finding the actual shape. So I started with that corner of the leaf that I see it a little bit more rounded. And then on the other side, I see that this corner maybe is not here, but maybe it's a little bit higher. So I can just do the line to make it higher, and so the corner is here. And put it all the way down. All the way down. And we connect it. So the lines that we draw when we were simplifying the image, of course, they're gonna help us a lot. But they're not the ones that are gonna stay. They're just gonna be reference lines that are gonna make us understand things like the proportion of the leaf, or gonna make us understand the general shape. But when we start working on it, then we can see that all this can just be gone. Then we're gonna do this with the rest of the leaf. I think on the other side Also, where this triangle ends is not exactly the point where our reference is ending. Is also like on this side is a little bit higher, just not as high as this one. Here we have it like here. And we also see that is of course not a straight line. We have some curves. We can just start to follow. And what I was telling you about lines, that this is a great example, that this line that crosses here, that's the nerve of the leaf. It's just giving us a huge separation of where the light is and where the shade is. We're gonna work on this later, but it's just very clear on the left side of the leaf. So we have this line, and the leaf goes a little bit like in and out again. And if you want to work more on your observation, if you want to do some exercises of observation, this is a great one. Like, just go online and Google a plant that you like and draw it. But an even better one is to draw plants that you have, for example, in your house. That's a great exercise to do. Because in here, yeah, of course, we're seeing the plant. But as I was mentioning before, photography sometimes can have things like maybe certain distortion can be created. So when we're drawing something from observation that we have right in front of us, it's going to be less likely that we fall into these issues. And also when you have a plan in front of you, you can also just measure it, grab a measuring tape and measure it and then put it on your paper like this is. And I think this leaf would be around 17 centimeters. And that's just my guess, but looking at the picture. But if you have your plant house, you can measure it, and that's also gonna make your drawing more accurate. Okay, so we have this line that's going down. But when we look at here, we look at the reference, we actually see that is a curve. This is going outwards a bit. And then it's going inwards again. We're going to take it out. We're going to bring it back. And then I'm just realizing that this point is maybe not as accurate as I thought in the beginning. I'm just going to move it a little bit. Okay, on this last one, this line looks pretty straight to me. Okay, it of course has a little bit of a curve, but it's not as strong as the other angles that we were working with. We can work with that pretty nicely. Yeah, so do you see how deconstructing the image is gonna help us a lot to get to the final presentation. And I said final representation, but this is this is actually the sketch. But what's the sketch good for? For understanding, just look at it as like research. So we want to understand texture, we want to understand shapes, we want to understand size, colors, positions. We want to understand the structures that the leaf has. So if we take a look, this was one that I was talking about, this very strong one. Okay, now that I'm looking, I'm looking at my drawing right next to the reference, and I realize that this point is actually too high. I don't know if you guys see it as well, but now I cannot unsee it. Well, Norma is saying that she loves plants, that she has a lot. Yes, no, for sure. I also have a lot, and that's why I love to do this exercise because it's very easy, you don't have to do much. You just have to sit in your house and start drawing. Juan Escobar says, I don't speak English. Juan, you know the comment that we have down saying that the best way to learn another language is while you're doing something you like, I think is very accurate. You can practice your English while you're drawing. And you just have to follow what we're doing on the paper. So, okay, I'm gonna bring this down. I think would be around here. So I'm gonna take this one longer. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. Alright. This is what we have to be doing in the observation exercises. We have to evaluate all the time, like, okay, am I drawing what I'm seeing, or am I drawing something different? Because maybe when I started, I was very like, okay, I have triangle here, I have a triangle here, triangle down. And if I would have stayed with that, then we would have a sketch that's maybe not as close as the reference that we have. But every time that we look and then we're correcting these things that we're seeing, then we're just getting closer and closer to the representation that we're having in front of us. We're gonna draw the nerves of the leaf now. So we have the main one that goes here. And we have the other two that go up to the corners of the upper part. So we have those here. This is a personal preference, and you can all do different things. But when I'm doing my initial sketch, I like to use something that is not that dark. So right now I'm using a 2H. And then when I start elaborating more, then I'm gonna go darker. But it's because of that, because when you're using something lighter, you can just erase your mistake and keep going, Still have to think that this is our sketch paper. So whenever we're gonna keep elaborating it, we can just pass it on to another paper. And I will show you different techniques that we can use to trace our sketches in other papers. So yeah, on this stage is a lot about erasing and going again with the line that you like the most, with the line that's closer to what you want. And you can do this until you feel satisfied with the shapes. And this is completely up to you, I have to tell you. I feel pretty satisfied with my outer shape right now. So let's see. What we're gonna be doing now is that we're gonna start working on the shading. So as I mentioned, This is gonna help us to understand the volume better. So we can do like a general one. For starters, what do I notice? That the left side is way darker than the right side. I don't know if you can also see that. And when we're drawing leaves, this is a very common thing that happens. One side of the leaf is going to be catching more light than the other, and that tells you information, that gives information to your brain about the position of the leaf, about where the light is coming, about how deep the leaf is. So I'm going to go ahead and grab an HB, and I'm going to do a general shading on the left side. So again, I'm grabbing my pencil on the side, so we can have contact, a bigger contact of the pencil with the paper. This is gonna help us a lot control our pressure. So I'm just gonna do it on all the left side. I know that there's parts that are catching the light as well, but we're gonna think about that later. As I told you, you can always erase that. Always, always. And as you can see, I'm doing not a super big effort to draw this shadow. I'm just trying to be very careful with the pressure that I'm putting. And you're gonna be learning how to control this more and more while you practice. Okay, it's very interesting because when I look at it on the paper and then I look at it in the computer, then it doesn't look that dark. So I think maybe I just have to be a little bit more bold with it and just go darker. So here we go. Okay, in this higher part I do see a big light here. So let's save that. And I'm gonna do the rest with the shade. Okay, now we can go back to the line talk that I started a bit earlier. When I was asking you what is a line in your drawing. When you start drawing a line, what is this really representing? And then in here we can see it very clearly. This line is representing the change of this shade part to this light part. We have a structure here that is the nerve, and maybe it's also having, to the base is having a little bit more of a thickness. So we're gonna draw that. So I'm gonna draw the thickness of it. Let's erase that. So it may be more clear. Yeah, okay, that's better. Alright. So when you understand that the line is actually just trying to divide the light and the shadow, then you understand that doesn't have to be a big contrast between the light, between your line and the continuation of it. Maybe when we look at it in here, it feels stronger, this line. So that's just telling us that this part is not dark enough and we can go darker. So let's go darker. I want to remind you that I already changed my pencil to a darker one, so I'm already using the HB. Maybe I'm gonna go back to a harder one when I'm gonna be drawing the lights, like the light we have here and the light we have here. It's not completely white, right? There's some texture on it. But the way we're doing this is that we're going from the general shading to the details. So right now we don't want to think about texture. Right now we're only thinking about the general shade and how this is helping us understand the volume of the leaf. And I'm just trying to match my shade part with my line. So it's not a line anymore, but a whole volume. And then when I started darkening this, then I realized that this is way darker, that I should go even darker with that. So you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump to my 2B. My lens says I'm a metal graver from Argentina. This technique helps me to create my own drawings. I'm also a watercolor artist based on jewelry, practicing my English with this class. That's amazing. That's also very interesting that you're a metal graver. I would love to see more of your work, and I'm very happy that this is helping you with your drawings. And if you already know watercolor, I'm pretty sure that you're gonna be able to do an amazing illustration of the animal that you decide to work on. Okay, I'm looking at this and I'm noticing that this side is darker than the rest. Do you see that? I'm gonna play with that right away. I want to know how your drawings are doing. Are you following the same example? Are you being able to control the pressure on your pencil so you can see all the gradients? I know if you're not familiar with pencil, it doesn't always comes that easy, but you'll get to it. I think it's a thing of understanding how the angle of the pencil is going to give you a different straw. Okay, so you see this big shade in here? I'm gonna darken it a bit more. And let's keep this lighting space that we have here. Right, I will set that roughly. This is the left side of the leaf with the depth. So we're gonna go to the right side. As I mentioned, the right side is not as dark. But we have interesting things, like if you can see on this edge, we have a lot of shadow. It just looks like the leaf doesn't finish here, but it has a little bit more of leaf that is hiding here, and that one is not catching any light. So that makes us understand that light is coming from here, because we have this strong shading here. So this part of the leaf has an inclination that makes it not catch all the light, but a bit of shadow on it, and then the most part of the light is catching this. Do you see also that there's a big light here on the bottom of the leaf? We're gonna go back to it later. As I mentioned, this is the part where we're doing the general one. And I'm working with the 2B, so I'm gonna step back because I know that this part is a bit lighter, and I even want to step back to the 2H. So as you can see, what started with just 3 triangles is already something that looks way more as a leaf. Okay, I have a big light here. Then I have this nerve in between. It looks to be catching a lot of light, and then I have, let's draw that light here. And then this part is also a bit darker. This is why it's important to have different pencils. Because sometimes if we're too focused on the dark part, yeah, we're gonna find a lot of different tones. So on the dark part, we already found like a very dark and a very light part. But they were working right now on the light parts, and we still see a gradient. So we still see this light that comes from that nerve that is giving this texture here. And this one is continuing here, and then it's a bit interrupted. Okay, so yeah, we're always going to be working from general to specific. So details go last. So don't rush in making the details. I know that we already can see a lot of things. I know that we can see more nerves that go on the leaf. We're going to focus on that a bit later. For now on, we want to keep still focusing on the shading. So I just want to really have my darkest darks. And I can see here that we also have one of those, the ones I was mentioning. Mm, that is just, it looks like a thicker line, no? It's just the shading of this fold. That we have it all the way on this side. Okay, we do have it all the way on that side, but I also want you to see that right next to where it's catching all the shadow, we have a reflection light. So like, okay, let me show you. All this side is darker because that fold of the leaf is completely on the shade. And then right when remember I told you on this down part we have a big light. Let's erase it and find that light again. Let's erase other details we don't need. So then we have our shadow here. Right next to it we have a light. I'm just gonna erase the light. I hope you can see it as well. It goes all the way here on this side. And on the right side it's gonna go up. And it follows a bit the edge of the leaf. And when we do that, we have a lot of information already about the shape of it, about its volume. When you're drawing things like this, you realize that very small details can already give it so much life to a drawing. So what am I noticing now? That my dark parts are maybe not as dark as I thought they were. So we're gonna go darker, okay? So yeah, I was focusing on this part and then I realized that this is a bit lighter than this. That doesn't mean that this is lighter than this. So we can still go darker than that. And you know, sometimes for me it's hard, and I think for everyone it can be hard to identify the general shadow of an object. And this is just a little trick I do when it's hard for me to see it. I just squeeze my eyes. You know, to that point where it's blurry and you cannot really see the details anymore. You're looking almost through your eyelashes. And then when you're looking almost through your eyelashes, then what you're gonna see is the general shading. So that's just super useful trick. You guys wanna try? Yeah, you can try with this exercise that we're doing, but you can also try just looking around in your house. Like, what do you see after squeezing your eyes and before squeezing your eyes? Can you understand the light better? How the light is touching the objects in a better way? For me, that definitely helps. And when you're drawing from a reference, it's not always obvious where the sun is coming from. Maybe if you're drawing your house plants, like we were talking about before, then you know, right? Because you have the window right next, and you're like, okay, yeah, sound is in that direction, so I clearly know where the sun is coming from. When you're drawing from a image, from a picture, you don't really know this. And on these type of pictures that you find online, a lot of things can happen. Like you can have different sources of light, and that's gonna make it a bit more complicated to understand what light is coming from. Okay, so I'm here darkening my darks so we can see this clear difference between both of the sides. I think there's also happening on this side that is not just plain light. Like if you look at my drawing and if you look at the reference, the difference is not that abrupt. We do have a really strong light here, but the difference is not that much. So we can just do a transition when we're coming close to the nerve, and we're gonna make it a little darker. And just as in the exercise that we were doing before, we're gonna take it softly to our softest. So let's see, this is the software that we have, and then we're gonna mix it together. When we mix this difference that we have in gradients, you cannot link them together or no. Like you have this tone and you have this tone, and we're gonna link them together, and when we do, then that's gonna help us and our brains to realize that they're the same object, so you're not gonna feel that separation that strongly anymore. And when we're able to link these different tones together, and we see already that is all coming together as a part of a whole. This is just us working on the shadow. We're just working off the shadow of the object. But we have to focus also on these lights. We're gonna do this soon. This is gonna show you how it all comes together. Yeah, you can already see it, how it's integrating more. I'm gonna jump to a 4H because I wanna work on these parts. When you have two tones in your drawing that are very different, and you grab a hard pencil, a hard pencil is a great pencil to blend these tones. So if you can see, I'm just applying very little pressure. And this is gonna allow me to have a very light tone and connect it together with this dark side. So in here we can see that this is a little bit lighter and then it goes darker on the top. We can just tone it down. And I kinda have that corner, a lot of happening on that corner. I left a lot of space for light, but I think maybe it was too much, so I'm just gonna close it a bit. This is very cute. The ending of that part is just going behind, so what we're seeing here is the back of the leaf as it turns. Then maybe there's bigger shadow. There's lighting is just prolonging a bit more than what I draw in the beginning. So let's give that light space again. Yeah, I think something like that. Okay. Okay, this is a very tricky part because it's the light now. But as I was mentioning, the light is not all white. I do feel that we have a little bit of shading here. Then like this line is just very very light. Then the rest has a little bit of tone that we can make it a bit more obvious. Just a bit because still the light. No, but I think that works pretty good. Yeah, no, I do think that works pretty good. And every time I work on it, I just feel like I should go darker. So let's do that. On this part especially, I can go darker. We always want to make a gradient. We don't want to do a change of light that is very abrupt. I mean, sometimes it happens, no? From here to here we have a very abrupt change of light, but inside of this volume, like if we go from here to here, we see that that's very softly. And this even is maybe prolongs a bit more that side. In this moment, I also want to show you how we see the shape of the leaf. in here is a bit rounded, no? Like we're seeing this light a bit like this. So how is this gonna help us? Because if we are drawing the shades and then we also go with the shape of the object, that's gonna make it look more realistic. I'm just gonna erase a bit here because I have a very strong transition that was left from the general shading. Whoa, technical issues, I'm sorry. And then you can work with it. You can work with it like that. Your shading is also going with the shape of the object. This is just gonna make it more realistic. And if you see, we're still not working on textures. We're still not working on the details, like the smallest details. But we're already using different structures of the leaf to be able to understand this object better. Like I draw this one and now it's looking like a nerve of the plant, so we can use that. And then this side is catching a lot of light. We know that we have our sun coming from here. So this is catching a lot of light. I'm gonna erase it a bit so we understand that it's a bit lighter. But still, we don't want to make an abrupt interruption of these lines. So we are gonna use a hard pencil. Okay, I have my hard pencil here. And I'm gonna transition from the outer line to the inner one. Even when the light is coming from here, this edge that we see is a part of the plant that is catching less light. So because of the shape, this part is catching all the light. And because the shape is rounded, then as far as it gets from there, it's going down, then it's not catching the light anymore. We can convey that with our hard pencil. I'm using the 4H here actually because it's... And we're back. Oh, and we changed the image. Wait. This was our next activity. I think I spoiled it for you. But we go back to this one. Let's stay with this one and we're gonna leave the other one for our homework, okay? Yeah, class is almost over. Just wanna stay a little longer because I know that we didn't start as early as we would want to. And I just wanna show you how we can do some details here. You know, this is impressive. Every time I look at the camera, I feel that I can go darker. So yeah, this is me not being afraid to go darker. And if we start doing some details, you're gonna be realizing that it comes more and more to life. It's just that this is an exercise that can take us a while. And I would love to see how this exercise is looking for you. And yeah, so we're mentioning the lights come this way, and we have the nerve of the middle. It looks like on the right side you have all the shadow. I'm just gonna kind of indicate where the nerves are. One here, one here, one here. The other side we have one here. And the other one is a bit lower than the first one, so like around here. Yes. And this is an exercise of understanding how all the gradients that you can see in an object you can create with your pencils. And you can work yourself up from the first deconstructive version that we have of this plan to a version that has way more details. One thing that illustration can teach you is patience, no? Yeah, this type of exercises we can just work on for a lot of time. Keep elaborating and keep elaborating it. Right. So with our shadow we can show where the nervature is going. Maybe at the beginning was just a line, but now with our shading we can show that it's there. It has a volume, and also with the nervatures. If you let me, I can keep working on this for a really long time. But I think we're running out of time. Let me see. Every time you look at it, there are things that you're gonna want to adjust. For me, in this special case, is the darkness. I'm just trying to go darker and darker. But if you notice, when we're using all the gradients of the pencils, that we can create these very smooth transitions. Alright. This is gonna be your homework for the next class, because I'm pretty sure that most of you didn't finish this exercise, as I also didn't finish. So I'm gonna finish it as well, and I'll show you next class how this sketch would be finalized. And I want you all to also work on that. I want you all to sit down with this image and with your drawing and work on these transitions, and just do the exercise of squeezing your eyes and trying to see which parts are darker in your drawing and which parts are lighter and which parts needs to be elaborated more. This was an exercise to get you just a little bit inside of the world of scientific illustration. There's also an exercise to allow you to play and have fun with pencils. You know, the possibilities that you have with pencils are a lot, and we're gonna discover that through this course. I just invite you to keep coming to the course. We're gonna learn a lot of how to keep elaborating these illustrations. But yeah, for all of you that are following the course, I want you to keep working on this. There's an option on the platform where you can upload your homework, and I'm gonna be checking the work that you submit, so I can provide you with feedback. We're gonna be having classes every Tuesday and every Wednesday at this time. What we're gonna be doing on Saturday is that I'm gonna be answering your questions. So all the questions that you have right now, all the questions that you had throughout the class, you can also leave it on the comments. You can also comment it next class. And on Saturday, we're gonna see each other and I'm gonna solve all your questions. Saturday, we see each other at 10 a.m. on PST time, 12 p.m. on CST, and 1 p.m. on EST time. And on Tuesday and Thursday, we're gonna be here at 4 p.m. PST time, 6 p.m. CST, and 7 p.m. EST. I hope to see you all there, and I'm really looking forward to take a look on your homeworks, okay? Okay, this is me. I'm back. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for joining today, and I hope I'll see you again on Thursday. Bye bye.